He called me dead weight in front of 37 people. No heads up. No meeting invite. Just barged into my weekly ops review like a preppy guillotine in tailored chinos. Cold, sharp, and oddly pleased with himself. He didn't sit. He didn't smile. Just leaned casually against the whiteboard I was mid-sentence presenting from, took a loud, deliberate sip of his pistachio smoothie, and dropped it like a guillotine blade. Why do we still have legacy staff? It's like carrying dead weight. Imagine standing in a room full of people you've led, mentored, shielded through chaos, and suddenly, you're reduced to excess baggage. Dead weight. Not a person. A drag factor. No one laughed. No one moved. Just the sterile hum of the HVAC and the sudden, acrid burn of your dignity catching fire. That's how humiliation lands when it's premeditated. Not like a slap. Like a scalpel. I was Director of Strategic Fulfillment at Albrecht Global. My fingerprints were in every corner of our logistics pipeline. I didn't inherit the system. I engineered it. I'd flown cargo through 2 hurricanes, rerouted freight during a trade war, and brokered a multi-million-dollar acquisition while sitting beside my father's hospice bed. Chase Aldridge didn't know that. Didn't ask. Didn't care. He walked in with a jawline sharp enough to cut empathy and the ego of someone whose resume had been buffed and built by his father's executive assistant. He had the kind of confidence that only comes from failing upward. Rumor had it his last job barely made it to a full pregnancy term. 9 months. Ended with mutual decisions and a plagiarized pitch deck pulled straight from a YouTube dropshipper tutorial. Now he was Albrecht's transformation consultant, which is corporate speak for, legal said we can't legally make the CEO's son the CEO. So they gave him a title vague enough to wear like armor and sharp enough to wield like a knife. And that day, in that room, he aimed it at me. He painted a target on me with that one sentence, and I knew it. I didn't flinch, didn't speak, just clicked through the next slide, closed the PowerPoint, nodded to my team, and walked out before my face betrayed the heat rising behind my eyes. In the bathroom, I locked the door, sat on the toilet lid in my blouse and heels like a soldier mourning the war before it was officially declared. I stared at the grout lines between the black tiles until I could breathe again. Counted them. 12 visible cracks. Same as my years at Albrecht. Funny what you notice when your world is shifting under your feet. I'd seen people go before. I'd been in the room when entire departments were sliced off the org chart like trimming fat off steak. But this wasn't about optimization. It wasn't metrics. It was personal. He didn't need to fire me. He'd already decided I didn't belong. The rest? Just paperwork. Back at my desk, a post-it clung to my monitor like a pink omen. Chase wants to see you at 4 p.m. I texted my husband. Looks like it's happening. He replied instantly. I'll chill the champagne. Or the shotgun. And just like that, I knew 2 things. The axe was coming. I wasn't going down without sharpening a blade of my own. At 4 o'clock sharp, I walked into a glass conference room that felt more like a glass execution chamber. Chase was already seated, flanked by 2 HR reps whose practiced smiles had all the warmth of an obituary written in advance. It's a look you learn to recognize, the one they wear when someone's career is about to be folded, stapled, and quietly removed from circulation. Lena, Chase said, voice dipped in false fondness. Let's be honest. You've been an asset. A really solid archive. Archive. Not expert. Not leader. Archive. As in useful once. Now mostly decorative. He slid a glossy folder across the table, thicker than decency, thinner than mercy. We're pivoting leaner. More agile. Think of this as reinvention. I didn't need to open it to know. That folder held the funeral arrangements for my time at Albrecht, signed, sealed, and laminated in HR legalese. The severance was generous. Too generous. 6 months base, full bonus. All vesting options untouched. That's not compassion. It's hush money with a bow. He wanted me gone. But not angry. Not loud. Just gone. A disappearing act with a smile. I signed it with a steady hand and a throat full of gravel. Then I stood. Smiled. Walked out like I had brunch reservations and 0 regrets. But inside, I was already reaching for the file I'd hidden 6 months ago behind a stack of old tax returns and a winter coat I hadn't worn since the pandemic. That night, I uncorked a bottle of Ch's Reserve, vintage enough to predate Chase's first social media post, and laid the folder flat on the table. Struxon Freight Acquisition Packet, confidential. Because while Chase was busy playing corporate air with his smoothie and smugness, I was quietly arranging to own the very supply chain he thought he could manipulate. He didn't know I'd been having silent breakfasts with Cole Marrow, the grizzled founder of Struxon, the freight titan whose infrastructure our entire ops machine relied on. Didn't know Cole's marriage was unraveling, or that his lawyers were prepping a valuation for private dissolution. Didn't know I flew to Dunewell last October in a gray blazer, sat across from Cole in a diner with flickering lights, and walked out with a handshake on a napkin and a signed NDA tucked beside my boarding pass. He didn't know any of that. But he would. And the next time Chase Outrage looked at a freight manifest, he'd be looking through me. Because while he spent 6 months plotting my exit, I spent 6 months preparing my arrival. Monday came like a quiet detonation. Not with fire or fanfare, but with the stillness that precedes an earthquake. The kind of silence that makes your skin itch. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Too much adrenaline. Too many spreadsheets rotating through my head like a carousel of chaos. Projections. Margins. Contingencies. Revenge had a budget line now. As dawn bled pale light through my blinds, I was already dressed in battle gear. Slate gray pantsuit, hair twisted back, expression unreadable. The severance Chase thought would pacify me? It wasn't a golden parachute. It was my launch code. At 8:04 a.m., I stepped into the belly of the beast. A squat, concrete building 2 hours south of Eastville. No name. No logo. Just a keypad and a flickering hallway bulb buzzing like it remembered better days. It smelled like burnt coffee and dusted dreams, exactly the kind of place empires are rebuilt in secret. Cole Marrow, founder of Struxon Freight, met me in the so-called break room, a sad square of linoleum where the Keurig sputtered like it had survived a war, and the vending machine refused to vend anything but disappointment. He looked like what happened when resilience aged, a rumpled Henley, steel-toed boots scuffed from decades of grind, and the hunched posture of a man who'd carried too much alone. "You sure you want this headache?" he asked, sipping styrofoam bitterness. "You buy in. You inherit every demon since 1997. I smiled without blinking. I'm a woman in logistics. I've already danced with the devil. This is just his cousin. He laughed. A real one. Deep and unexpected. Then he tossed a manila folder across the table like it weighed 1,000 pounds. 51% controlling interest. Pending wire confirmation. I made the transfers without hesitation. My severance, blood money reborn as capital. A long-forgotten crypto investment from back when Bitcoin was something you awkwardly explained at parties. And the last, my sister's trust fund. Sacred. Untouched. The emergency I hoped would never come. But this was blood in the water. And it tasted like pistachio smoothie. By 11:45 a.m., I legally owned Struxon Freight. By 1:30, I was in their system as interim chair. And by 2:10, I was drafting the freight restructuring letter that would land on Albrecht Global's desk like a velvet-wrapped sledgehammer. No fireworks. No angry press release. Just a clean, surgical 18% rate increase, plus a polite little pause in premium scheduling. Volume congestion. Strategic realignment. The kind of language that sounds like logistics but feels like war. Chase wouldn't know what hit him. Hell, he probably didn't even know what Struxon was. Procurement handled vendors. He dealt in optics and bravado, which meant he'd feel the pain before he even located the source. I finally exhaled. Not a victory sigh, just space for the next breath. But before I could savor the taste of revenge, something shifted. At 3:26 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Dunewell area code. I let it ring. Let it die. Then came the text. We should talk. Your move didn't go unnoticed. Okay. My blood turned to glass. Because only one person in my life ever signed with AK. Margot Aldrich. Chase's mother. Harlan's ex-wife. The ghost in Albrecht's foundation. The woman who once leaned in at a summit lounge, glass of wine in hand, and whispered like she was giving away a secret worth millions. "You're smarter than all of them. You just hide it too well." I hadn't seen her in 6 years. Not since the quiet buyout. Not since she vanished from the company ledger like she'd never existed. 12% ownership scrubbed clean, profile erased from the leadership page like a bad headline. And now she knew. She knew what I'd done. How I'd done it. When. Which meant only one of two things. Either I had made a devastating mistake, or I had just stumbled onto her board. And this wasn't a company anymore. It was a chessboard. And I'd just stepped into the Queen's line of fire. I didn't respond to Margot's message. Not right away. Instead, I did the one thing that felt remotely sane. I walked. Not for clarity. Not for calm. For motion. Because if I stayed still, the truth would catch up. It was that kind of walk, the kind where your legs move but your mind is a furnace, fanning its own flames. Every step thudded with the questions I didn't want answered. Why now? Why her? How did she know? Only 5 people at Struxon knew I was the new majority owner. 5. And every one of them had a stake in keeping that secret buried. Unless one of them cracked. Or worse, Margot never left the game. She just moved to the shadows and waited. Back in her prime, Margot Aldridge wasn't just respected. She was revered. And feared. If Harland was the name on the building, Margot was the reason people whispered in the elevators. She didn't run marketing. She weaponized it. A strategist with pearls and poison in her smile. The staff had a nickname for her. The Velvet Guillotine. If she wanted you gone, you wouldn't feel the cut. Just wake up locked out of your inbox and wondering when your badge stopped working. And then one day, just like that, she vanished. No farewell email. No press coverage. Just a line buried in a quarterly report and rumors of a buyout so large, it had its own zip code. She became corporate folklore. The kind of ghost who didn't rattle chains, just balance sheets. But she was back now. And she wasn't just watching. At 5:12 p.m. I cracked. My thumbs hovered, reluctant to touch glass. Then, "What do you want?" The typing dots blinked on. Disappeared. Came back. Her reply landed with the precision of a checkmate. "Dinner. Just you and me. And some overdue honesty. Tomorrow. Caldera's. 7 sharp. You'll want to hear this." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. Caldera's wasn't a restaurant. It was a chessboard with a wine list. It's where senators whisper across $300 steaks, and nobody ever asks for a menu because the sommelier already knows your sins. She booked it on a Tuesday. That wasn't dinner. That was a move. And I walked straight into it. At 7:03 p.m. the next night, Margot was already seated, swirling a glass of red so deep and heavy, it looked like war paint for royalty. She hadn't aged. Not even a little. She looked like she'd stared down the devil, seduced him, and then renegotiated his divorce terms. Her eyes were lined but bright, too bright. This was a woman who'd been planning something. 4 years. She didn't speak. Just slid a small envelope across the white linen table. No words. No greeting. No preamble. Inside 3 photos. Chase, shaking hands with Cole Marrow. A stock transfer agreement, dated 2 weeks before my buyout, with Chase's name on the dotted line. An email thread between Chase and Nolan Wade, Struxon's CFO, discussing terms like vertical integration and quiet consolidation. My fingers stiffened. My spine went cold. "He tried to beat you to it," Margot said, voice low and smooth like ash over silk. "But he was too arrogant to check who held the swing shares. Your timing? That wasn't luck. You didn't just buy Struxon. You blocked his entire consolidation plan." I blinked. Swallowed air that didn't reach my lungs. "He wanted to acquire Struxon for Albrecht?" She nodded. "Calm. Lethal. Control the supply chain. Inflate its valuation. Gut it, flip it, cash out in 2 years. Golden parachute and a legacy press release." A pause. "You ruined that." I leaned back in my chair. My voice felt brittle. "So what's this, then? You gloating." Her smile could have sliced glass. "This is an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "You keep Struxon. I want in. 5%. Silent. You run the place." I feed you intel. And in 6 months, she leaned forward just enough. Chase will be dangling from strings he thinks he tied himself. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. Why would I trust you? Her expression didn't shift. Because I hate my son more than you do. For a long, electric moment, the linen-draped table between us wasn't a table, it was a battlefield. 2 women, both burned by the same fire, staring down the throne they'd once been denied. Then slowly, deliberately, I reached for the wine menu. If we're going to burn this dynasty down, we'll need something decent to toast with.